Good evening. Welcome to the St. Charles County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. At this time, I would ask everyone to please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I see we have a quorum. Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor sign aye. Aye. Okay. Welcome to the June 17th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. At this time, I would request that everyone please turn off or mute all electronic devices. Applications for rezoning will be heard during tonight's meeting and will be voted on by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Commission will then make a recommendation on the applications, which will be submitted to the St. Charles County Council for their final decision. The individual items for this evening's rezoning applications are scheduled to be introduced at the Monday, July 13th, 2020 County Council meeting. Applications for preliminary plats heard during tonight's meeting will also be voted on by the Planning and Zoning Commission during the meeting. The vote on preliminary plats is final. Only a recommendation for denial of a preliminary plat will be heard before the County Council at the Monday, July 13th, 2020 County Council meeting. The following documents are introduced as a matter of record for this evening's public hearing and regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Those documents are the Unified Development Ordinance of St. Charles County, including zoning maps, and the year 2030 Master Plan for St. Charles County, which includes the year 2030 Future Land Use Plan map. I'll give you a brief introduction as to how our meeting is conducted. I will read the application into the record. Then we will hear a report from staff, at which time members of the commission can ask questions of the staff. Then we will have the applicant to come forward and present their application and answer questions from the commission. At the conclusion of that, we will then have a public hearing. Anyone here in the audience wishes to speak can come and speak regarding the application. Once the public hearing has been closed, we will take no other comments from the public. We may ask the applicant to come back to answer questions or concerns that came up during the public hearing. Then we will bring the application back to the commission for discussion and a final vote. If you're going to speak, to my left, the microphone, it will be the speaker's stand. Okay. And on that stand, there's a white card. Please fill out the white card with print your name, address, and the application number. This is so that we can get your name correct in our minutes. So the first item on our agenda is application RZ 20-07. The property owner is Hyman HK Revocable Trust. The current zoning is A, Agricultural District, 5-acre minimum lot size. Requested zoning is RR, Single Family Residential District, 3-acre minimum lot size. The 2030 Master Plan recommends rural residential, which is 3-acre minimum lot size. The parcel size is 84.2 acres. The location is on the west side of Bustocker Drive, approximately 300 feet south of Forestdale Road, near the city of New Melly, located in Council District 2. Staff.
As you mentioned, there's two items on tonight's agenda consecutively that are related to each other. The first is a rezoning application, and the second is a plat. So those are two different considerations and two different votes, and the considerations are different. What the considerations that you take into account for a rezoning is not the same as a plat. Plat is more of a technical consideration, whether it does or does not meet the technical requirements of the subdivision regulations. So first, I'm going to make comments on the rezoning application. As you mentioned, the property in question is about 84 acres. It's just south of Forestdale Road, northwest of New Melly, and the current zoning is a agricultural district, as is the zoning for quite a ways in all distances. The zoning is squarely a agricultural district. That's different, though, than the master plan's recommendation. The master plan recommends rural residential land uses. The map that you see in front of you, all of that light yellow, that shows areas that our 2030 master plan recommends for rural residential. And the reason I mention that is this property, I would call it squarely within that rural residential area. This property is about 2 miles north of the southern boundary of that rural residential and a little more than a mile south of the rural residential area. And the concept for the rural residential area is to allow rural residential uses on 3-acre lots of greater. It's not quite rural, it's not quite suburban, but it's somewhere in the middle. And the comments made at the county council meeting and in putting together the master plan included the idea that rural residential would be sort of a buffer with the municipalities. And so it could be a buffer towards the truly agricultural, well, I shouldn't say truly agriculture, but the agriculture area in the southern part of the county. And that was one of the thoughts behind the rural residential land use category. 5-acre lots are a lot easier to redevelop into subdivisions than 3-acre lots. So once you have 3-acre lots, that's a pretty stable land use for a number of years or even decades. So again, the master plan is for rural residential, but the agricultural zoning is the current zoning. And the difference between the two is pretty much the number of homes you could build, because under the existing agricultural zoning, you could build by right, I'll say 16 or 17 homes on this tract. I'm not exactly sure. It depends on several factors. But what's being proposed along with this rezoning is a plat that would include 25 homes. So we're really talking about the difference between about 8 or 9 homes. That's the difference that we're talking about here. That would, if it were rezoned rural residential, it would allow maybe 8 or 9 homes more than what the current zoning does allow. Admittedly, the current zoning does allow a wider range of uses. It includes by right homes on 5 acres or more, and it allows agricultural uses by right. So there's a broader range of uses that would be allowed in the under the current zoning. So you may want to take that into consideration. The range of uses is much narrow in the RR zoning district. Similar lot sizes for 3 acres can be found to the northwest in the Auburn Meadows subdivision. Now, that subdivision was developed in 2005 at a time when the agricultural zoning allowed by right 3-acre lots. And so about a year after that subdivision came about, the county changed the ordinance and did 2 things simultaneously. One, adopted the rural residential zoning district, and at the same time changed the minimum lot size in the agricultural zoning district from 3 to 5 acres. So they did that simultaneously. I would say, though, when you look at this map, you see that although there's 3-acre lots to the northwest, around it on other sides is pretty much farmland. There's, for instance, to the south, the Alice Freeze Malters tract is about 100 acres, and obviously that's a different character than the subdivision in the north, the Auburn Meadows. County staff has reviewed the application and reviewed the comments made to this point, and taking everything into consideration, county staff is recommending approval for this particular rezoning. And I'd like to make part of the record, we have, and you have in front of you, communications of opposition from Alice Sprees-Molitor, Nancy Bursturi, Leslie Jones, Paul Molitor, Chris Cudahy, Dave Mulling, Elaine Sweeten, Janelle Brino, and Mike and Kara Dempsey.
Any questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll ask the applicant to come forward. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings or the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Tom O'Toole Jr. My address is 12400 Powers Court Drive, St. Louis, Missouri, 63131.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Toole.
My name is Dale Bax. I'm with Bax Engineering. We're located at 221 Point West Boulevard, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, again, my name is Tom O'Toole Jr. I'm an attorney with the firm of Mickus O'Toole, and I represent Greystone Holdings, LLC, Mr. Tim Griffey, who's here with us this evening, in connection with both the rezoning request under application RZ 20-07, as Mr. Myers indicated, and also, which I know is next on your agenda, but preliminary plat review application PRE 20-14. Greystone Holdings is the applicant in both applications. I'll see if I can get this on the right. I've given, did the commission get the copies of the PowerPoint? Thank you. Again, with me to assist in this presentation is my client, Mr. Tim Griffey, the owner and president of Greystone Holdings, and our engineer, Dale Bax of Bax Engineering, who introduced himself, who's well-known and well-traveled in this region in civil engineering. He's also prepared the preliminary plat and is also very conversant with the subject that's will be discussed this evening, and that is stormwater runoff, both generally and specifically as it relates to the subject property. I've delivered each of you a copy of our PowerPoint presentation, and I ask you to follow along. Summary of the application and requests herein, and to assist you in your deliberation here this evening. Let me start with this PowerPoint. As we indicated, it's a rezoning from A agricultural district, 5-acre minimum, to, which is permitted under section 405080 of the ordinances of St. Charles County, to RR, a rural residential district, which is permitted under section 405090 of the ordinances of St. Charles County, for an 8.42-acre tract of land located on the west side of Buzzdyker Drive, approximately 300 feet south of Forestell Road, near but not in the city of New Melle. Now, I understand it'll be taken up separately, but the next slide presents to you the pertinent facts that are included in Mr. Bax's preliminary plat. And again, the proposal here is for 24 lots on this 84.20 acre tract. 25 lots, thank you. Here's our preliminary plat, and you can see that it's situated as we indicated off of Forestell Road. The subdivision is known as Oakview Farms, and again, 25 lots, and each lot has a 3-acre minimum, and the average lot size is 3.16 acres. And we'll discuss more about the preliminary plat during that portion of the meeting. Here also in connection with this is a topographic preliminary plat that Mr. Bax has prepared. he can again discuss it further in detail. But you can see here's a distinction of how this plat is different from what was before this commissioner in 2009, this commission in 2019. Covering lots 6 through 11, you can see a drainage berm that's highlighted there in yellow, which is, again, as an effort to address any stormwater concern that this particular project might realize. And again, we'll have more on that discussion later. The next part of the preliminary plat is the subdivision entrance sightline profile. As you can see that it shows a vision looking right as you're entering out of the property onto Forestel Road. And then also looking left of the property. And then the left turn lane from Forestel Road into the subject site. The design speed, of course, is set at 45 miles an hour. And although the speed limit on Forestel Road is 35 miles per hour, as you can well observe. This, of course, complies with the sightline profile requirements of St. Charles County. Next slide, talk a little bit about what Mr. Myers indicated earlier about the master plan, or what's been called Envision 2030. The 2030 master plan adopted along with the future land use map was adopted on January 28, 2019. As implied by its title, the 2030 master plan, and this is a quote from the document, it is the planning horizon for the next 2 decades. The 2030 master plan recommends the subject's future land use to be, as we indicated, rural residential, our 3-acre lot minimum. Under that plan, the primary uses in this particular zoning district is single-family residences on large lots, 3+ acres. But here's an important point to make: clustering encouraged. So the planners, obviously, which this commission was part of, contemplated subdivisions or clustering in connection with this particular zoning district. And there's secondary uses which support the large lot residential use that's proposed, including schools, places of worship, and other public uses. Here's that 2030 master plan future land use plan map, which indicates the circled area in red is the area in question near the subject property. And it notes that this plan also says that this map recommends that the rural area north of Highway D and east and west of Highway F and Highway Z in the southwestern portion of the county, which is where the subject property is located, be developed as rural residential 3-acre minimum. The next map shows the location of surrounding 3-acre developments. You can see by the depiction in red, letters A, B, C, D, those are 3 different developments. The Kohler Estate's a larger tract situated there, were depicted in A. The Hyman K tract is a subject tract, that's B. The Minershagen tract, which is a tract that just achieved rezoning to rural residential earlier this year. That subject site is almost exactly similar to ours in size. I believe they were approved for 28 homes. And the Auden Prairie development, which is in D, depicted in D, is a 54-acre tract. The purpose of this slide is to depict that you can see around the area that's the lighter yellow, which is the 2030 master plan or Vision 2030's contemplated area for rural residential. The subject is situated well in the middle of that, as Mr. Myers pointed out, and you can see there's other developments surrounding that in that same region of the county. The next slide is a section under Missouri law that guides counties and municipalities in zoning. And you can leave to read that yourself, but a couple of pertinent points are, is this is section 89.040 of the Missouri statutes, which purpose of regulations and those regulations, i.e. zoning regulations, shall be made in accordance with a comprehensive plan. The section of statute goes on to say that consideration should be given, among other things, to the character of the district and, of course, encouraging the most appropriate use of land throughout such a municipality. So the 2030 master plan was built on the prior plans, 2020, 2025. Certainly outside planning consultants participated in that process. This Planning and Zoning Commission was in the middle of that process. And of course, the county council was in the middle of that process. We submit that obviously because of that effort that this county has placed in one of the fastest growing counties in the Midwest, the vigilance that's been put into that effort to plan properly and plan ahead, that this plan should be followed. Should be followed and taken seriously in light of the effort that was put forth, the volumes of effort to plan ahead for St. Charles County. Now, the points to consider, which suspect we'll hear from some in the public portion, but I might as well address it now, and that is stormwater runoff. We've addressed many of the concerns that came up in an earlier application. And again, as I mentioned, Mr. Bax has placed in important areas between lots 6 and 11 a new drainage berm, similar to what you'd find in contour farming, which slows water as it moves towards one part of the lot to the other. In this case, runoff towards the Molitor piece, which came up in the prior hearings. You know, the fact, ladies and gentlemen, is that 3-acre lots really don't create an inordinate amount of water, particularly after they're constructed. Mostly because there's a significant amount of grass and vegetation on those lots that absorbs the water. I know that I interacted with Mr. Holthouse recently about his development in St. Charles County. He's developed over nearly 500 lots in 3-acre zoning in the last 25 years. Minimal, if any, erosion damage in connection with those lots. I know that the reality is that the current zoning is 5 acres. 5-acre lots will have some stormwater runoff. That's the reality of residential and commercial development. It's going to generate stormwater runoff. I know Mr. Bax can speak more specifically at the right time tonight about his experience and expertise in that area, but the reality is 3-acre lots are not going to give off significantly more water than the 5-acre zoning that occurs currently. So somebody's going to develop this property, and somebody's going to develop it residentially at some point, and the material difference between the stormwater runoff between 5 and 3 acres is de minimis. So I know we'll have a lot more discussion about that tonight, but I want to set that record early. Some of the other things that came up was the increased traffic and population. The current zoning, again, is 5 acres. That would permit, we think, about 17 homes based on the configuration of the lot. We're proposing 25 homes in a 3-acre zoning. Again, ladies and gentlemen, the difference between the increased traffic and population by those 7 or 8 homes, and again, is not material. You could bring in any traffic expert to tell you that the additional traffic that will be created by those 7 or 8 homes is not material. And so the plea to this commission that we shouldn't rezone this because it's currently 5 acres to 3 acres because of the traffic and population increase is really just misplaced. The other point that I think is important, that I'm sure this commission is aware, is there is discussion about future sanitary sewer expansion in this region, the Dardine Creek expansion to be specific. This commission is well aware that if sewers come to this property, that it will cause those property values to increase because of the value of that utility. And those applicants will be in here asking for lots on very small coverage. I suggest you a quarter acre or less. We've seen it around this county. We've seen it in St. Louis County. It's just a reality. If the property's improved that significantly, they're going to ask for better, more dense zoning than we're talking about here tonight. So I think the old adage applies: the devil you know's better than the one you don't know, or the one you don't want. And again, I think the master plan is an important part, and we'll maybe talk about it towards the end. But again, the planning that's going on here, the 2020 plan, the 2025 plan, is a very vigilant county, and now this 20 master plan, it needs to be followed. Planning experts have a vision or a roadmap of what zoning should be in a county. Applicants rezone properties, not planning commissions, not city councils. But they were vigilant to be ahead, and it's uncontroverted, Mr. Myers said it, that this property is situated right smack in the area that the very long and arduous process said should be rural residential. So the plan actually says that this 2030 map and master plan should be the planning horizon for the next 2 decades. And certainly we think that should be the case. I'm certainly glad to answer any questions that the commission might have. I know there's probably going to be when we get into the discussion further about some of the engineering in connection with this. We've got the best expert in St. Charles County, and we're prepared to address those as they arise.
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none?
The only other thing, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask to reserve the right to have some rebuttal based on what the public section
That's part of the process.
admits, and then I'd probably ask you to admit some of our things with the record at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing for application RZ 20-07. Anyone here wishing to speak regarding this application? Arnie? There we go. Come on, Arnie, hurry up.
Good evening. There we go.
Come on, Arnie. You solemnly swear or affirm that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings or the pays and penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinoff, public advocate and county resident. Mailing address is P.O. Box 1535 in O'Fallon, Missouri, 63366. Just a moment of clarification, Mr. Chairman. Will there be 2 public hearings, one
Yes,
for the
there'll be
rezoning and
2
one
public
for the
hearings.
Plat? Okay, I'll keep my individual remarks
Do the
about the
rezoning.
runoff, retention, and sewer for the next public hearing. We're addressing the rezoning currently.
Yes.
We fought as residents, a group of residents that live in the area, and myself as being a public advocate on behalf of people who don't know how to participate in our governance or come to these meetings and fight for themselves. We fought and defeated a similar rezoning attempt just less than 4 months ago before this commission, and it went on for months before the county council. The project is currently zoned or is allowed 5-acre tract, which would be 16 homes. And the difference with the applicant is they were wanting 25 homes. It's a difference of 9. Now, 2 miles is the designated line in the comprehensive plan. And it was part of those discussions, part of that crafting, and that was made for the urban county residential R1 district. Now, 2 miles is quite a distance. We're not talking about 200 feet or 2,000 feet. We're talking about 2 entire miles. I believe that this is a huge difference. This is a stretch of the imagination. a developer trying to get a free pass here, going against our comprehensive plan. It's not even close to the area that would allow for the 3 acre lot size. The lack of public amenities that was mentioned by the attorney and by the applicant, in terms of water, sewer, and other type of amenities are at the utmost, discussion here on this property. Basically, it comes down to, we're talking about the same property, different day. They're trying to find out a way around the political system and some way to encourage you as appointed officials of the Planning and Zoning Commission to give them a stamp of approval. I'm asking that this Planning and Zoning Commission draw a line in the sand, make a firm stance for the second time in 4 months, that we will not tolerate a exorbitant or going against our comprehensive plan. I'm asking this commission to stick with the 5 acres per home, allow 16 homes on this property, which is allowed by our current codified county code. And I'm asking that the planning and zoning recommend to the county council denial of this application for rezoning. If there's any questions, I'll entertain them. If not, I will have a seat.
Any questions for Mr. Denhoff? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak regarding application RZ 20-07? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Ask the applicant to return. Anyone have any questions for the applicant? I have one. Will there be a homeowners association?
I suspect there would be. Mr. Griffey says yes.
Who would maintain the berms that you propose on lots 16 through 11?
Yeah, the individual property owner that would have those berms situated on their real estate.
Okay.
But, Mr. Chairman, sorry, but that's pretty common when you have any kind of rain fields or something that is on property for detention or retention or stormwater runoff, they generally get deeded, or the responsibility of that goes with the homeowner.
Could you describe that? Could you describe the size, the height of that berm and
That's going to be
composition?
part of the next hearing.
Oh, okay. Well,
Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, let Mr. Bax describe that.
Yeah, basically, well, again, my name is Dale Bax. I'm with Bax Engineering. Basically, what we're trying to provide here is a means of stormwater management to offset the runoff that Ms. Molitor is experiencing. Mainly, we don't want to be damaging any other property within the area of our stormwater runoff with this particular development, whether it's Mrs. Molitor or any other surrounding property owner of this tract. This landscape berm that you guys see, or diversion berm or drainage berm that I'm showing on this plan, has not been final designed at this time yet, but I can explain it to you as you guys drive around this county in the state of Missouri. When you look at a farm field that's on some type of rolling terrain, you will see these types of diversion berms built to control the stormwater runoff on that. It keeps the erosion down. It allows them to obviously get more crop out of the field if they have less erosion. And we're looking at that as being the same way, whether it be grass or we're planting corn or wheat out here. We want to keep the erosion down. In order to do that, we're going to put in a diversion berm of some type. Now, the final design of that will still have to be determined based upon the amount of water that's going to this diversion berm. And it will have more than one relief in this diversion berm. We don't want to center the point of relief or the release of the stormwater and concentrate it into one particular area, which would then just cause further erosion and concentrate the water into one location. So we certainly want to take all those matters into consideration when we do the final design of this diversion berm or landscape berm. But right now, I couldn't tell you if it's going to be 3.5 feet or 4.5 feet tall, or whether it's going to be 6 feet wide or 8 feet wide. But that will be determined, and we will be providing all calculations and necessary approvals through St. Charles County Highway Department through our construction plan process if we're so lucky to have this approved.
With the current design on that, where do you anticipate, where do you anticipate the water going?
Well, the water is going to be heading in a southwest direction as the existing terrain and the existing contours direct that water in the southwestern direction towards Miss Molitor's property. So we'll be directing that water in the same location. We're just going to actually control the water a little bit more so that Mrs. Molitor will not experience any erosion or damage to her property. So there'll be several outlets along that diversion berm, so it's not being concentrated.
Well, my concern is the maintenance of this berm 10 or 15 or 20 years from now.
Yeah. The berm will be planted in grass. It will have outfall standpipes in it like you typically would see in a farm application, whether it be corrugated metal pipe or some type of PVC pipe. That would be a private application. It would not be public, nor would it be maintained by St. Charles County. So basically, it's just portion of mowing their grass. I don't expect to, once vegetation is established, I really don't expect much maintenance to this diversion berm because it is going to be grass and it will be mowed with their lot, and very, very little maintenance will come with this berm.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman, just in response, I think I consider Mr. Bax the expert, now I'm the layman, but the layman's view of this is this berm is to slow the water down so then it gets absorbed on the subject track and minimally displaces water on abutting property owners, not unlike any concept of stormwater management or runoff. In connection with Mr. Dienhoff's comments, I would just rebut by saying, I don't know about a free pass, but it's pretty obvious, and the staff pointed this out, that this zoning is a lot more restrictive than the 5-acre zoning. So there's no passes here. And particularly with the new subdivision ordinance that was passed relative to 5-acre lots now in this county, my client will be more restricted in his zoning here and how he builds this development than he would in a 5-acre. That's number one. Number two, I don't know what comprehensive plan Mr. Dienhoff is reading, but it's pretty clear right in here. It says it pretty black and white. So I think the commission's well aware of that. Glad to take any other questions on the rezoning application.
Any other questions for the applicant? Hearing none, thank you, sirs.
Just before you close, Mr. Chairman, again, I'd ask that our PowerPoint presentation and a copy of the, I assume the staff has already done so, but a copy of the St. Charles County Master Plan 2030 be made part of the record.
It's part of the record.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll bring this back to the commission for consideration. Any questions of staff, comments?
I'm a little bit surprised at the tone of the opposition letters, that there's no one here to talk about it in opposition to it. That's a little surprising to me.
I would agree.
I think one of the areas of concern is while the planning, the master plan does call for it to develop over the next 2 decades like that, I think that it's also got to be somewhat of an organic development too. So that is one of my concerns. 16 homes on this, as it currently sits, seems like a fairly good density, but I do understand that eventually that is the way it will develop, but I think there's also an organic aspect of how that develops. And I think that the several other sites that were pointed out, some of them, the 2 especially to the east, were in areas where 3-acre developments are already very commonplace.
Any other comments, questions? Yes, sir, Ms. McDonald.
I appreciate the berm, but I'm still very concerned about stormwater runoff, and the issue comes up in the opposition letters, quite a few that we have received. So I'm going to vote no.
Any other comments? Chair will entertain a motion to approve application RZ 20-07, which is the rezoning of the Hyman H.K. Revocable Trust property, rezoning from A agricultural district, 5-acre minimum lot size, to RR single-family residential district, 3-acre minimum lot size. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Mr. Hollander makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Clary made the second. Mr. Kuhn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Fromm?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
No?
Mr. Hollander?
Yes.
Ms. Bamer?
Yes.
Ms. Sally?
Yes.
Mr. Clary?
No.
No. I vote yes. Passes 6-2. Okay. Now,
Thank you,
let's
Mr.
see.
Chairman, members of the commission.
Go back to, okay, the next item on our agenda is preliminary plat for the Hyman K. Trust, Hyman K. Tract, Oak View Farms Drive. Application number PRE 20-14, property owner is Hyman H.K. Revocable Trust, the engineer surveyor is Bax Engineering Company, developer is Greystone Holdings LLC, existing zoning is A agricultural district, 5-acre minimum lot size. The requested zoning is RR single-family residential district, 3-acre minimum lot size, proposed lots 25. The parcel size is 84.2 acres, location on the west side of Busdacker Drive, approximately 300 feet south of Forestdale Road, near the city of New Melly, located in Council District 2. Staff.
The background for this application is the same as for what we just reviewed, so I won't review that again. What I would say is that in this case, we're proposing 25 lots, which is, as I recall, the same number of lots as the last time this was before you. But how this is different, there's a couple of differences here than before. One, the streets will be paved. Before, they were going to be rock streets. And second, they're proposing a berm to intersect stormwater from lots 6 to 11. At least the berm will be on lots 6 to 11. How I would explain the stormwater for this tract generally, again, it's about 84 acres. If you draw an invisible line from like the northwest corner diagonally across to the southeast corner of the tract, it's about half and half, and stormwater goes one way towards the east and one way towards the southwest. Just for explanation purposes, I'll call that the eastern and western. The eastern half, as I'll call it, that stormwater naturally flows towards this creek that runs along the eastern border of the property. And so the creek, which is a tributary of Darden Creek, that intersects the stormwater and carries it away for the eastern half. The western half is a little more complicated. A little bit of the water flows through Auburn Meadows Subdivision, and then the rest of the water flows south towards what has been described as Alice Free's Molitor's Tract. And it's that area of the stormwater that they're looking to intersect with this berm across lots 6 through 11. And so the water would be intersected, and so excess stormwater would be not only intersected but moved towards the east, towards that creek I was just talking about. But the net effect would be that it would, although differential runoff for either 5-acre lots or 3-acre lots is not that different when you're talking about pre-development or post-development, still there is some differential runoff, and so they're proposing to take that differential and move it towards that creek that I was just explaining about. Also, as I understand it, there will be public water supply, but not sewer, meaning that not only will there be potable water for drinking water, but also the water lines will be large enough, and there'll be fire hydrants for fire flows as required by the New Melly Fire Protection District, so it'll meet that requirement. Also, the turnaround at the end will be large enough to admit school buses, as I understand it. And those are some of the differences from the last time you reviewed this plat. And I would end by saying that the plat meets the technical requirements of Chapter 410, the subdivision regulations of the county ordinances.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll have the applicant to come forward. Have to swear you in again, it's a different hearing.
Glad to do it.
You solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings under the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
We already have your name, so go ahead, Mr. Bax.
Well, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Bax because there may be some questions for him, but a couple observations as we lead into that. One is our staff just explained half of this property is going to a creek. The other half of the water is being slowed by the berm or the drainage berm or some contouring that's slowing that water to the properties to the west and the south. It gives you pause to say, well, that's a pretty good plan. And I think my client has gone to great lengths to try to meet the questions of his neighboring property owners and how he would address that drainage. And I think Mr. Bax has done an excellent job from an engineering perspective to come up with this plan. I will remind the commission that, it was slightly touched on, there's not going to be any significant material difference between the street access to this development or whether it's 5 or 3 acres. The impervious material, which we all know to be an added impediment for trying to prevent stormwater runoff, is going to be there in either instance. So we're not going to have less streets in a 5-acre development. So I think that point's worth taking. And we also did, I was glad to hear Mr. Myers mention that the turnaround was made larger to access for the school buses, emergency vehicles, anything like that. So we're glad to answer any other questions. I think our plat's up there, not only the preliminary plat that depicts the 25 lots, but also the topographical that addresses the stormwater and also the site profile for the ingress and egress to the subdivision. I'll turn it over to Mr. Bax. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is the one I want to see. Yeah, you can see this. Again, my name is Dale Bax. I'm with Bax Engineering. You have my address as well. This is our topography map, topographic map of the existing topography of this ground. So you can see this is a rolling farm field. It does have a rather sizable drainage channel running to the southeast from the northeast. That is governed by St. Charles County as a natural water course. We have added a 25-foot buffer from the top of the creek bank as a no disturbed area. In this particular layout, there is only going to be one lot. That's lot 21. That's going to be fronted off the other cul-de-sac off Buzz Dagger Road. That is the only lot that's going to need to apply for a special permit from St. Charles County to build a driveway and cross that particular waterway. Other than that, we're leaving it completely undisturbed, other than lot 21 to actually gain access. With the development, it's already been spoken, we're going to do 20-foot wide roads, which is a new requirement for residential streets to be paved by St. Charles County as of April of 2020. As it was spoken, the lots will be served by public water. We do not have sanitary sewer, as Mr. Tom had mentioned previously. They have not made it up to this particular track, so we're going to be doing septic systems. We have already submitted to DNR our application for septic system design. They've come back with their letters that we've submitted to the county, and I believe it's somewhere around 1.3 acres is what they would deem that we could put a septic system on this particular tract of ground. They do come out and take soil testing, and they do study that, and they give us their reports, and we furnish that report to St. Charles County Planning Department. So our 3-acre lots are more than adequate to support a septic system according to DNR on this particular tract of ground. The diversion berm has been talked about many, many times. I think you guys realize what we're trying to do with this diversion berm. If we can come up with another engineering component to help control this stormwater in the process of going through construction plans approval, we will certainly take those into consideration. At the preliminary plan process, we just want to encourage and let you guys know the importance of this stormwater runoff to our southwest, and that we take it very seriously, and that we will be providing some form of an engineered swale, an engineered berm, some way, some fashion to control this stormwater that we've heard so much about at our last hearing. So I just wanted to reiterate that again to you guys, that we are taking this very seriously. I know Mrs. Molitor's property has already been damaged by other development, and we do not want to see that any further caused by that. So that is our plan. We've pretty much talked about it. Certainly will answer any questions you guys have. What we have done, there's an existing pond that is going to be removed. And then we also removed a proposed pond between lots 9 and 10 for this development. But basically what you're seeing here is the exact same 25 lots that you guys seen a few months back, with the reduction of a couple of ponds and the addition of this landscaping diversion berm process that we're going to be engineering. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have for us.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, on lot 21, where you said they're going to do a driveway, that will kind of interrupt the flow of that water. Are you planning on putting a culvert under the driveway, or what are you looking to do to keep that water running in the right direction? And
Yes, ma'am. We will not impede the water flow that's existing today. The final design will be determined whether that be a box culvert or whether that would be a large storm pipe. But it would be designed to carry a driveway over the top of the drainage channel, and it would meet all St. Charles County's requirements for stormwater design, also crossing that particular creek.
Will the developer be putting that in, or the homeowner?
That would be the homeowner's responsibility. That can also be negotiated at the contract stage of the purchase of that particular lot as well. It would be done by a professional plumber that would be licensed to install storm sewer systems in the county.
Another question that came up in several of the letters was talking about the soil composition. When you were out there, several of the people who lived there, and probably have lived there for quite a while, had stated that the soil was very, had a high level of clay. Did you find that in your investigations?
Well, I'm not the soils engineer, but we did have St. Charles County Soils evaluate this, and he did give us a report. There's actually 4 different types of soils out there. It's more of a silty loam type soil. But I'm going by the recommendations of DNR with their testing that they've done as well for the support of sanitary septic systems. That's their task. That's why we submit it to them. They do it every day. So they've done many soil tests out there to determine that the site is adequate for septic systems. As I spoke earlier, I believe the lot size came back at 1.3 acres. The state requires 1 acre. St. Charles County requires 3 acres. So we're upholding the St. Charles County requirements of 3 acres in lieu of the 1.3 that DNR is allowing us to put septic systems on this particular tract.
So when you're going to do the berm and some of the other areas, will you add some topsoil to the area to help prevent? Because I've lived in St. Charles County my whole life, and I will agree with some of the homeowners, when it's hot and in the summer and you get we'll call it a gully washer, and that water hits that hard clay soil, it doesn't matter how much grass you have, that water goes.
Absolutely. We want to see vegetation on this particular berm, no doubt about that. That's what's going to help absorb the water. That's what's going to help reduce the flow of the water. Grass does many, many things, so we are definitely wanting to put topsoil and grass on this particular berm, no doubt, ma'am.
What about on the landscaping around it? Are you going to leave that up to the homeowner? Because the water moves. It won't just stay because the berm is there necessarily. So what about that?
Well, the idea right now is to if you're going to build a home on one of the lots, would be to strip the topsoil off and stockpile that topsoil off to the side of your house. Dig your foundation, build your footings, build your foundation, build the house, backfill the foundation with suitable soil and use that topsoil to finish top coating up your yard to plant grass on. So it's very good soil for planting grass on right now. They just have to strip that topsoil and save that topsoil, which is typically done in an application like this. Subdivisions where you grade the entire development, most of the time you don't see any more topsoil. When you have a development like this, where you're going to be very, very little impact on the lots themselves, our biggest impact is building the streets. After that, the biggest impact would be each individual home. And that's where we will instruct them to strip that topsoil and to reuse that topsoil in the front yard. The builder is going to encourage that, no doubt about it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We will now open the public hearing for PRE 20-14. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings under the pains and penalties of perjury.
Yes, I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinoff, County Public Advocate and resident. And first thing I'd like to address is one of the commissioners had mentioned of the 8 opposition letters, why those 8 people weren't here and present. If I read, and if you all read those emails or those communication to staff, they were afraid to come here because of COVID-19. In lieu of publicly testifying before you, they submitted written communication, written documents in lieu of public testimony. So I want to make that a matter of the public record, that those 8 people are in full opposition to the rezoning into the preliminary plat. And I believe they were not here because of they're afraid of COVID-19. Now let's address the preliminary plat. There are current water issues, as we all know. There's definite erosion that I have personally seen at the Molitor Farm. The Auburn Meadows that was built in 2004 caused a lot of this damage to the Molitor Farm. Water has to go somewhere, and it has to be absorbed. By putting in these 25 homes that you just approved in the rezoning, it will take away greatly the absorption rate. So water runoff is a problem here. The drainage berm is the applicant's solution to slow the water. My questions, as the chairman brought up, what about maintenance? That needs to be addressed in the final plan. Hopefully we'll see that in the final plan. But also liability. I think that needs to be answered here. Who is going to be liable if that berm breaks and causes damage to the homes or to the adjoining farm? I don't hear that being addressed. Vegetation. There are no plans currently in the preliminary plan for vegetation. Hopefully they'll cover the vegetation in the final plan. When we talk about that liability, I also don't see an escrow, and I'd like that to be a mandatory condition in this application. I think in this application, there needs to be some type of escrow to make sure that the developer says that they're follows through what they're gonna say they're gonna do. And by having that escrow in place, either with monetary cash or a letter of credit from the bank, will ensure that that berm will be built to specifications to comply with our county code. I don't know what that figure should be. I don't know if it should be $10,000, $50,000, or $100,000, but I definitely like to see a condition of an escrow in this situation. And that's not only to make sure that the job is done right, but to protect the future 25 property owners, if it does pass the county council. Next thing is retention and detention areas. Last time that we went through this, their plan was kind of lackadaisy, really didn't have specifics or details, but they wanted to put in 3 small ponds. They've now taken that out of their equation. But we want to make sure that there's no flooding and that there's proper retention and detention. I don't see in the preliminary plat where this is addressed. Sewer and septic. I was fine with the 5-acre plans, but now you approved the rezoning down to 3-acre plans. My question is that sufficient enough to provide septic leach egg requirements and to meet with our county code? Open space and green space. I don't see anywhere in this plan where they offer open space and green space. The pictures that I saw, I'm not sure if depict the entire pictures of the property, but I want to ensure that our tree preservation code is being met. As we all know, the Francis Howell School District with the Daniel Boone Elementary School, that school is bursting at the seams. There are no more desk spaces for any additional students at this school. There's overcrowding. I don't see a letter addressed to the Francis Howell School District. I don't see a letter back from the superintendent or the deputy superintendent over pupil services if they can service the increase of population to educate the students of the subdivision. Fire Protection District. Again, I don't see a letter from, I believe it's a New Melly Fire Protection District to see if they can enhance and meet the demands on a new subdivision. Turning radius for emergency vehicles and school buses. The engineer and applicant said that they have the correct turning radius, so I'll take their word at it. But roadway safety improvements on Busker Drive really needs to be taking place here. We're talking about a country road with no ditches, no guardrails, no deceleration lane, no safety requirements whatsoever. This roadway needs to be upgraded to today's standards and to protect lives and pedestrians. And I don't see anywhere in this plan that it's being addressed by the applicant. Conditions for protections. I don't know if we'll see them in the final plan, but this is a place to really talk about them. Number one, condition of protections. There are no conditions from staff. Staff says Chapter 410 of the Codified Code is good enough. I don't think so in this case. It doesn't go far enough to protect the adjoining property owners. It doesn't go enough to protect the future homeowners, which you approved the 25 homes. When you're talking about maintenance and liability of this berm, I don't see where it's being addressed or any condition from staff or the county counselor's office. My final question and comment to the commission is, in this case, in this preliminary plat, are we protecting the developer, the builder, and applicant? Are we looking out for the health, safety, and public welfare of the 25 residents and the current residents that live around this property? I shake my head at staff when they don't put conditions, when they don't put protections. It just makes me irritated, makes me furious, and makes me question why government doesn't protect the current property owners and the potential 25 property owners to come in the future years. I ask that you put some conditions here that I came to the table to offer up to protect everybody, and I hope that we see these in the final plan. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Mr. Dennell? Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak regarding PRE 20-14? Anyone else? Ask the applicant to come back.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just by way of rebuttal, Mr. Bax will address a couple of these specific comments made by Mr. Dienoff. I just want to make a general comment. We're in a preliminary plat review process, and of course, ask this commission for its approval tonight to pass it on to council approved. Many of the things raised here, and we'll get again into the specifics, are done in the permitting process after this time. We're not skirting these things. Many of these letters and requirements, they're already in place. But I want you to know that my client has contemplated this. This is not his first development, and he knows the requirements and conditions that the county will place on him, and he's well prepared to accept those. The only other thing is I would comment before I turn over to Mr. Bax is about the absorption. You know, this property in its current rural undeveloped stage has a rate of absorption. It's going to be developed. So that's the question. How do we enhance that absorption? How do we manage the stormwater runoff that is least impactful? But my client has the right to come here like Mr. Dienhoff does and develop property within this county pursuant to your ordinances. That's what we're asking for. We're not asking for something to vary from those ordinances, and we're well prepared to follow them to each of the letter of the law. And I'd like Mr. Bax to comment about many of those points advanced by Mr. Dienhoff. Thank you.
Thank you again. My name is Dale Bax. I'm just going to address a few of the items that Mr. Dienhoff has put forth towards you guys. Escrows for the development. St. Charles County will not let us develop a subdivision, any type of development, commercial, industrial, residential, without providing any form of escrows. So there'll be escrows that'll be placed with St. Charles County Highway Department when the plans are approved and they give us approval to start construction of the development. So all escrows will definitely be put in place that are required by the county. I think the 3 small ponds that he's mentioning is at a different project that I just did called Minershagen, where we talked about 3 small ponds on that development. We never talked about 3 small ponds on this one previously. Open space, well, that's why we're going to live on a 3-acre lot. That's all open space for us. Now, granted, it's not common ground that everybody can use within a development, but everybody has their own 3-acre lot to use as they wish for green space, open space, and their needs. Tree preservation, the only trees we're cutting down in this development is the trees. Right when you come in the development, we make a right. There's a row of trees along our northern property line. Once we get out of that tree line right there, there are no other trees being removed from this development. That picture right there depicts it very well. It's only the northern line of that trees that we're going to come through to build our roadway to get into the development. So tree preservation will certainly be managed and met by this, per the codes of the county. We do have letters from the fire district, and we do have letters from the school district, and we do meet all the turning radiuses for both fire and school district and St. Charles County's requirements for intersections. So I think that's the only ones I really need to address. I didn't see anything else in here. Oh, Busdyker Road, he talks about the safety of that road. That's just an existing gravel road within the development that will be upgraded as part of our development. You'll see it on our plan right there. It does call it out to be upgraded per county requirements. I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you guys have for us this evening.
I have a question concerning the berm. Will it be built piecemeal as the lots are sold?
No,
or
this
will it
berm will be
constructed?
built with the development. When the streets go in, the berms will go in. We need to start protecting our property as soon as we start developing the property. Putting in the berm in at the end doesn't really do a whole lot of good for protecting our surrounding property owners.
Other questions for the applicant?
Do you have a size of the minimum and maximum size of homes in there in your, any kind of covenants at this point?
Well, at this point, these will all be custom home lots. They will certainly meet county's requirements, but each individual lot purchaser will bring forth a building plan to the county for review and approval with their plot plan for that particular lot. So we don't have just a cookie cutter set of houses that we're going to build for this development. We'd certainly like to keep it 100% custom. So they can choose plans from Mr. Griffey's stock, or they can bring their own plans and Mr. Griffey can bid those plans for construction. But they will certainly be, most likely in my experience on 3-acre lots, it will be much larger than the county's requirements for a single family residential ranch model or 2-story model.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bring this back to the commission for consideration. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve PRE 20-14, which is the preliminary plat for the Hyman Cade tract. No, it will be known as the Oak View Farms Drive. So moved. Mr. Cleary made the motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Fromm made the motion.
Pardon?
Mr. Fromm.
Mr. Fromm made the motion. Well, you're too far away. Ms. Baer made the second. Okay, Ms. Sally, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Clary?
No.
Mr. Kuhn?
Yes.
Mr. Fromm?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
No.
Mr. Hollander?
Yes.
Ms. Bamer?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It passes 6-2. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, and
The next item on our agenda is preliminary plat for twin silos. The location is 2510 Church Road. The application number is PRE 20-15. The owner developer is Charlestown Crossing LLC. Engineer survey is Bax Engineering Company. The zoning is A agricultural district, 5-acre minimum lot size. Proposed lots are 12. Parcel size is 72.39 acres. The location is on the south side of Church Road, approximately 2,000 feet east of Blaze Station Road, located in Council District 6. Staff.
Okay, the main points of this plat, I should start by saying the location of this proposed subdivision is north of the city of St. Charles. A lot of times when you think of the area north of St. Charles, you think of floodplain. There's actually a ridge of land that extends north from the city for some miles north that's out of the what's commonly called the 100-year floodplain. So this is in that area, except for there's a little strip of land that was previously designated in floodplain on this property that I'll talk about in just a moment. But the primary features of this proposed subdivision is that it's 72 acres, 12 lots. Acres are, the lots would be a minimum of 5 acres each in conformance with agricultural zoning. And it would consist of a cul-de-sac, and you'll see in the illustration before you, the road splits, and in the middle, there's a retention area that, as I understand, would hold water. The subdivision would be served by individual wells and also individual sewage treatment, so on-site for both. And the area of the property that was previously designated as floodplain has actually been revised by FEMA through a letter of map amendment. So it's no longer designated as floodplain. The county staff, well, I should also say what's a little bit different about this subdivision as well is that the streets will be built to public standards and would expect it to be made public streets, and they'll be built to public street standards. That's somewhat unusual for a subdivision with 5-acre lots, but that's the proposal here before you. The county staff advises that the proposed plat meets all of the technical requirements of Chapter 410 of the Unified Development Ordinance.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll have the applicant come forward. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Please state your names and address for the record.
My name is Dale Bax. I'm with Bax Engineering, located at 221 Point West Boulevard, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301.
My name is Sean Leslie. I represent Charlestown Crossing, 239 Fox Hill Road, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301.
Okay, thank you. Don't forget to fill out a card. Go ahead, Mr. Bax.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here representing Charlestown Crossing LLC for a project called Twin Silos for the preliminary plat. This is kind of difficult, a little bit light it looks like here, but our particular site is off of Church Road. I'm pointing to it right now. So we're on the northern side of St. Charles County. We're north of Highway B, west of Highway 94 on Church Road. It's 72.39 acres. It's actually at 2510 Church Road. It was a farmhouse with silos and barns on it. It was used as a farm property. Since then, they've gotten a permit to demolition the barn, the house, and we're gonna save a couple of the silos out there as well. We're gonna use those for monumentation and landscaping. So what we're proposing here this evening, I just wanted to show you where this was at again on the land use map. We are in agricultural zoning again, back up here in the dark green section of St. Charles County on the northern side. Nowhere near any RR residential, it's all agricultural up there. And we're gonna remain agricultural and propose 5-acre lots. This is a blow up of the aerial of the site I got off of St. Charles County GIS site. This shows you just the outline of the site itself. As I mentioned earlier, it is 72.39 acres, with hardly any trees on it whatsoever, just a bunch of scrub trees and some trees that were dying that were up around the house. And this is, man, this is light. I apologize for this. I'm not sure how I can get this any darker, but you can't even see this. So we might just want to have the county, if you could pull up your map that you had up there earlier, right there would be
We've got it on
perfect.
screen.
This is just a little too light for us to see and for the audience to see. This is a layout of our tract. We've got one single entrance coming off of Church Road, heading south into the site, and a looping road with one extra cul-de-sac on it. That kind of takes care of that oddly shaped piece of ground at the southeast corner. All the lots are minimum of 5 acres. Some are much more than that. We're proposing a 24-foot wide public road. So we're going to build it 4 feet wider than their minimum standards. And that will be on a 42-foot wide right-of-way as well. The surrounding properties to our north is I-1, which is across Church Road. It's being used as farm ground at this particular time. To the south, east, and west are all agricultural. Farm use, some are farm use, some have houses on them. But generally speaking, in the area that surrounds us right now, there's a single-family resident to our southeast, but generally farm ground, and we have some sporadic neighbors as we go up and down Church Road. Lots will be served by individual wells and septic systems. There is no public water nor public sanitary sewer up in this portion of St. Charles County. There is no floodplain that exists on this proposed tract, although we do have a jurisdictional waterway that we're upholding a 25-foot setback from our neighboring property to our west. When we surveyed this tract, there is a jurisdictional waterway that we've surveyed. St. Charles County has commented on that. It's the center of it's not actually on our property, but we're upholding their request of holding 25 feet off of that particular top of creek bank. It's just a drainage channel for these farm fields is what it is. It's actually along our western property line, and it drains from the south to the north. Kind of hard to see it on there because it's very, very small. It's only a couple of feet wide, but believe it or not, that is a drainage channel that we're going to deem as a natural water course and stay 25 feet away from it. It will be in the back of 3 or 4 lots. We don't expect any type of disturbance in that area, being that it's certainly within the rear yard setback. There'll be no construction of any future structures within that setback. We are proposing a 1.9 acre lake. I'm not going to call it detention, I'm not going to call it retention, and we're not going to call it water quality. It is a lake. Water's going to go in that lake, and water's going to exit that lake about as fast as it goes in. We have flared ends that take the water in at a certain elevation, and we have flared ends that take the water out at that same elevation. So water in, water out. What this will provide is a means of water quality. Water will enter in through the storm pipes. It will settle. Sediment will settle to the bottom of this particular lake, and then eventually go out the western direction through an outfall structure. We're not required to put detention or retention or water quality in. The developer thought it'd be a nice feature for the development. It can be accessed and used by all the lot owners, the 12 lot owners of the development, and it is sitting in common ground. So I just wanted to clarify that is not retention or detention. It's going to be a water feature. There is an underground pipeline. It's owned by Wood River Pipeline. I just wanted to point that out to you. It's at our southeastern side of the property. It's being pointed to at this time by Ellie. I appreciate that. We've left adequate room in front of the pipeline, behind the building line for any type of buildings or structures that would remain outside of the pipeline easement. Just so you know, that pipeline is carrying crude oil. It's not a high-pressure pipeline whatsoever. It's just a crude oil pipeline. We are not going to be disturbing that. We're not going to be filling over it. We're not going to be cutting under it. We're not going to be disturbing it. We are going to try to refurbish a couple of the existing silos that were around the existing house that was on the site. The developer wants to take those, just 2 of them out of, I believe, 5 or 4 or 5 of them, just 2 of them. We would like to place them at our intersection once you come into the development, which would be at the corner of the lake. I believe you'll see it on your plan. We've been working with county and staff to position those silos so that it doesn't impede into the runoff area. If someone takes their car and runs off the road, there's a relief area that we're giving them to give them a chance to get back on that road. So in the last few days, we've been moving those silos around a bit to be able to meet the demands of St. Charles County Planning Department with their runoff requirement. So with that being said, I'd certainly answer any question you guys might have for us for this development this evening.
How deep do you anticipate the wells?
Excuse me?
The well,
How deep do we anticipate those? I believe they're 350-foot wells. Nope. Sean's got a little more research on the
No.
well itself.
We have consulted with well drilling companies, and we believe that the wells will be in the neighborhood of 80 feet deep.
8 feet? 80, okay, thank you.
350 be a little deep.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I know that the property is above the floodplain. In fact, that you got a part of the property with a report from FEMA recently. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what I'd like to know is Church Road is, leading into and leading out of, is Church Road above that particular flood level? Next goes, there's always that concern about, obviously, the flooding of the road.
Well, the portion of Church Road does. It's under the floodplain. We've got the map pulled up right now. You can see at our western property line, that's where that drainage channel is. The county is showing some floodplain. We're a little bit right of there. There you go. So we'll have access out to Highway 94 through some flood fringe area. You can see that crosshatched area to the right is a flood fringe area. So our development can exit out of here without getting into floodplain. We just can't go west. We'll have to go east in that situation. And we've looked at the previous maps that the county has on the websites of the latest flooding that we've had in the area. We find no water over Church Road or on this property looking at those previous maps that were posted.
Any other questions? Thank you. We will now open the public hearing for PRE 20-15. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings or the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Wayne Boschert. My address is 5118 Blaze Station Road in St. Charles.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm here representing myself as a farmer in the area. I've lived there in the same house for 70 years. But also represent, I'm the president of the Archer Farm Drainage Association. And the ditch that, the drainage that he was talking about has been around since 1908. 1,822 acres drain into that ditch, drainage. It starts at 94 in Blaze Station and ends up below 94 just east of like the Archer Farm School, which continues on to another association leads to the Mississippi River. We had a meeting with, on March 16th with Tom and his associates, and Sean was there, and we talked about it because we had a concern about the drainage of the properties, of the lots. Because I tell you what, on the big rains and the wet seasons, even that ditch, it takes a lot of water, and we still get flooded on our fields. And our concern was to Tom, the developer, that that ditch is full at its max. And then when you put 22, 24 houses on it? 12. I'm sorry, 12 houses on there. Well, it was higher because he was going with 3-acre lots, and he changed it to 5. But now, coming here tonight, my concern was too that there's no retention pond on that. It was 7 acres, 7-acre retention pond on that at the beginning, which they said would probably hold plenty of water that wouldn't overflow into our drainage ditch. So now the night we're here, it's just gonna be a pond. It's not a retention lake. So that kind of disturbs me also. People gotta live around there to realize the flood. 93 flood, the 73 flood, and last year, if the Missouri River would have broke, because we had Mississippi water not too far from Church Road, it goes over Church Road. It goes over Church Road on the west side where their development is, and it will go over on the east side of Church Road. People that live on Church Road in 93 use the tractor to get out, both ways. So I don't know where they're coming from when they say you can go out towards the east. Because people that live there know what the water can do and what it did. That water was over Church Road for a good 3 weeks. So I don't know how they can develop an area that road goes underwater, and it will flood again. You know, when it could have did it last year, if that Missouri would have broke the levee. Church Road is also a big ag business road. 2 Rivers, the co-op over there, that's a busy road. We told Tom about that at that meeting, that it is an awful busy road for ag. A lot of machinery, a lot of tanks go, carrying chemicals, fertilizer, what have you. And it just don't seem a good place. Tom's a good guy, and I like him, but it's just not the place. I don't think that we have to have a subdivision, especially with the road going underwater. Those people are going to be trapped in there. What else? I wish the county would think about, and there's places in this country, good farmland like the North St. Charles County. And everybody knows where St. Charles County is, north of 90 Highway B. We got to stop this development because of the fact that it's good farm ground. And the farmers want to buy this ground on these auctions, but the developers bid it up so high we just can't afford to buy it. But it is good farm ground. And there's places in this country where the counties are not allowing developers to purchase good farm ground, just like ours. St. Charles County has a jewel of farm ground. They don't realize what we got. It's being taken away, and it's a shame. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings or the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Richard Boschert. I live at 5319 Blaze Station Road, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301.
Okay, go ahead, Richard.
Okay, I farm the farm west of this development owned by Herb and Rose Birding. I think you guys got a letter from them. They're opposed of this. And let's see, the waterway that Wayne was talking about a quarter mile north of this development is a railroad, and there's only like a 30-inch pipe under that railroad that all this water has to go through. And when we have these big rains, it's only taking X amount of water, so then the water backs up in the fields. And if we have more houses, more runoff, it's just going to be an escalating problem. So, and I also agree with Wayne that this is prime farmland. I just hate to see it developed. I mean, our generation, it's not going to matter, but you get into our grandkids and great-grandkids, you know, where's their food going to come from if you develop all this farmland? So anyway, that's about all I got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings or the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Please state
So
your
help
name
me
and
God.
address. Please state your name and address for the record.
My full name is Joseph Andrew Walker. I go by Andy. I live at 2729 Essex Street in St. Charles area, Missouri.
Thank you. Go ahead, Andy.
The property immediately to the south is owned by my wife and her sister. And we have had problems with drainage through that drainage ditch almost every year. Almost every year I go out and watch their crops get inundated and killed by excess runoff. Well, it's there. You got to deal with it. That's farming. But adding these number of houses as a subdivision in that location is just going to make a bad problem worse. I just don't think this is an appropriate place to be putting a subdivision at this time. And I don't see any recognition of the flooding problems. I don't see any approaches to minimizing or reducing the problems that the subdivision would cause. I don't have anything else to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You solemnly swear or affirm that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings or the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinoff, County Public Advocate and resident. Mailing address is P.O. Box 1535, O'Fallon, 63366. My first comment is, since this is 2,000 feet from the corporate limits of the city of St. Charles, have we notified the city of St. Charles and sent them notification of this preliminary plat? I don't see anybody representing the city of St. Charles, but I'd like to try to get staff in the meaning of intergovernmental affairs and trying to reach out to our partners to notify corporate limits when something is affecting their jurisdiction close to their boundaries. I think it's very important to establish that good governance and not hiding anything. I agree with this property. The 5-acre lots, 12 lots on the 72.39 acres. In my opinion, this is responsible growth and it can be manageable. However, we have heard about drainage issues from 3 previous speakers and 1 emailed comment from a resident. And we hear about the oil line, which was of news to me until this evening. Let me address the pipeline, the crude oil. I'd like to I'd like to ask the commission to add a condition of a special escrow just in case that the developer damages or disturbs the oil line, that if there's any environmental cleanup or concerns, that it be paid for with that escrow. As we all know, if they damage this line, it will cost tens upon hundreds of thousands of dollars to environmentally clean up an oil spill. So that's the number one concern. Number two, as we heard from the previous speakers and the emailed comment from the resident drainage. This again needs to be addressed at the staff level, and I don't see any conditions placed by staff. There should be no free passes to the developer. They should be responsible and step up to the plate and be forthcoming in the prevention of any water issues. Now they want to put in a 1.9 acre lake. I don't know if it's a lake or a pond. I've heard both in this testimony. But I would like to add a condition that the installation of a filter, which would capture the settlements and debris, and that will definitely improve water quality, not by releasing it. There needs to be some type of filtration system. There needs to be some type of responsibility of the developer. Because if you have that silt build up, in about 5-10 years, guess what? That cost is going to be a cost of that homeowner association or those residents who are buying the 12 homes. And how are they going to come up with the tens upon tens of thousands of dollars to remove the silt from the bottom of the pond lake? Again, by building these 12 houses, they are taking away land absorption areas and will cause flooding elsewhere. That's a known fact. As we heard that there's concerns about roadway flooding, flooding in the farm fields, it needs to be addressed. I haven't heard staff or any questions about the protection of the existing farmers and the existing people living in this neighborhood. I don't see staff getting involved. That's the point of government, is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of everybody. Not developers that have money, but everybody. And I don't see staff getting involved in ensuring that somebody isn't going to be flooded out and lose their livelihood or lose part of their income. So the bottom line is the Planning and Zoning Commission needs to start protecting us, the residents, over developers. They came after us. Now they need to abide by our codified code, Chapter 410. They need to live up to their standards, and they need to prevent the flooding in this area. You heard the testimony. It floods when it rains. But let's put the conditions, let's put the requirements, and let's put the necessary escrows in place to protect the existing people living there and the future 12 new homeowners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak regarding application PRE 20-15? Anyone else? Hearing no one, we will close the public hearing. Applicants come back.
Yep, here I am.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I'd like for you to readdress the concerns, not just about Church Road, but especially the drainage issues concerning the ditch that already exists and, how that will be affected by the homes.
Well, we have all of our homes placed outside of that drainage ditch. We have all the homes placed above floodplain. We're not grading with inside that existing ditch. And we're not going to be affected by that ditch. We're not going to affect that ditch, I should say. We certainly don't want to alter the ditch. We don't want to alter the drainage of what's going on right now down in that area. We're not going to impede that water. It's going to continue to go from south to north. And it's not going to be near the houses, actually. The houses are all built quite far east of that, above floodplain.
So where will the water that comes off the roof and the streets and the patios and driveways drain to?
It's going to go to the exact same drainage pattern that it's doing today. We're not impeding the drainage that's going on. We're not allowed to do that. So we can't take water that was going to the west and push it to our east or to our south. So that same water is going to continue to go to the west and it eventually will filter out through that same drainage channel that's been spoken about.
Will there be a homeowners association?
Yes, there will. There's maintenance that'll be taking place with the monumentation and the common ground as well.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Is there going to be anything planted around the outside of this development? It looks like an island to me, like in the middle of this endless farmland. Is there going to be, you going to plant trees out there, or is it going to be the homeowner's responsibility to do that, or?
Well, I'm gonna let Sean answer that question.
Most likely, there'll be a combination of both. We will do some landscaping at the entrance to enhance the entrance, and most likely put at least one significant tree per lot on the homes, and then beyond that, it would be most likely up to the homeowners.
Okay.
How high above floodplain is this? So what is the floodplain and how high above it is that? 1 foot? I mean, if I read it right, it was 1 foot? It's only 1 foot above floodplain? Did I read that correctly?
Well, that's what we're required to build the homes to, is 1 foot above floodplain. I'm gonna try to answer your question here real quick. Floodplain is 438. Our streets are at 446, 448. So we are 4 feet above floodplain, or actually, we're 6 feet above floodplain, actually, with our roadway, and our lots are above floodplain as well. We're certainly not going to develop a subdivision that's below floodplain, and we're not going to sell lots and have people build houses that flood. So we're well aware of the flood requirements of the county, and we'll be building structures above floodplain.
Any other questions for the applicants?
I guess more philosophical question, but maybe to Tom, but it's been mentioned what great farm ground this is. What are your thoughts in terms of developing farm ground into a subdivision?
I have an opinion on that. Yes, it is farm ground, no doubt about it. There's farm ground all over St. Charles County, whether it be in the bottoms north of St. Charles, or whether it be in the bottoms south of St. Charles, or it be in the western portion of St. Charles. There's farms all over St. Charles County. There's no doubt this is good farm ground. I'm not going to deny that whatsoever. I'm not sure how I am going to answer your question here, to tell you the truth.
Well,
But
as I said,
can't
it's more a
deny.
philosophical question, but I think that is something to consider. Thank you.
You may have already answered this question, but how often does Church Road and Blaze Station Road flood?
How often?
Once a year, potentially? It seems like those roads flood fairly often, and to his point about the residents getting in and out, that might be a concern or not.
Well, I don't know how often that road floods. I'm only going by the maps and the data that I can research through St. Charles County. I don't actually have the particular dates that it is flooded. I did look at the latest map posted by the GIS Department of St. Charles County of the last flood that we had, and there was no water over Church Road at that particular time. Now, obviously, if a levee breaks, such as 1993, that poses an entirely different aspect to St. Charles County farm ground. So I'm not going to look at it in that fashion. We are protected by flood levees that are governed by our government.
Any other questions for the applicant? Sorry, sir, public hearing is closed, so only the commission can ask questions. Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll bring this back to the commission. Any questions, comments, concerns? Public hearing's closed, yeah. Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to approve application PRE 20-15, which is a preliminary plat for twin silos located at 2510 Church Road. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Ms. Mayor made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Clary is the second. Mr. Kuhn, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Fromm?
No.
Mr. McDonald? No. Mr. Hollander?
No.
Ms. Bamer?
No.
Ms. Sally?
No.
Mr. Clary?
No.
And I vote no. Okay. Application fails. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0 to 8. Okay. Back to the agenda. The next item was on our agenda. We have a continued item, which is application PRE 20-11, which we considered at the last meeting. This is a preliminary plat for Cottleville Hill, located at 5225 Guttermouth Road, and the applicant requests that that stay continued. It's still being considered by the county council. Next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the May 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, sign aye. Aye. Any planning and zoning division updates?
I just want to mention that I believe the next meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the July meeting, will be held back at the old courthouse. And that's my understanding.
Good.
We'll see about that.
So, anything else to be brought before the commission? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, sign aye.